This is the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo.
Hello and welcome to the Debrief live on the Blood Red channel to react to Liverpool's 3-0 victory over Crystal Palace earlier this afternoon. I'm Paul Wheelock and I'm joined by Matt Addison, who is not long back from Anfield after watching a win that has taken the Reds to the top of the Premier League table. Sadio Mane scored in his 9th consecutive match against Palace. How they must be sick of the sight of him by now, to make it 100 goals for Liverpool. And after a few scares at the other end, Mohamed Salah made it 5 goals for the season and now 99 in the Premier League for the Reds to effectively seal the points. But there was better to come, and there was still time for a Naby Keita special, volleying home, left-footed from the edge of the box to end his 15-month wait, I should say, for a goal. In the end, Matt, it worked out really well. A good afternoon down at Anfield.
Yeah, it certainly was. Yeah, it's one of those where you look at results elsewhere, and it was so important that Liverpool won that game. And I think after a week that they've had, obviously Leeds intense, AC Milan intense, to then go again and do this for the 3rd time in 7 days. I know it was something that Jurgen Klopp spoke about on his press conference on Friday, about having to make changes and go again. And we've spoken a lot about the strength in depth that Liverpool have, but I think they've proven so far this season that they can sort of push on 2 fronts, and it's absolutely vital. I think, Crystal Palace have started the season well. They've done really well, certainly against Tottenham. When I saw them, they look really impressive, and I think to just sort of sweep them aside really and really push forward and press on with what Liverpool did today, to win well and to deservedly win by the margin that they won by, I think is really, really impressive from them. And like I say, with results elsewhere going Liverpool's way as well, it was vital to get those 3 points. I think it's going to be vital, to be honest, to get the 3 points, particularly at home against all of the bottom 14 teams, and Palace certainly fall into that bracket. I think that's going to be pretty much the standard for Liverpool, for City and for Chelsea. There'll be the odd occasion where that doesn't happen, but Liverpool have to sort of get themselves the momentum, get themselves into that position where they can do that week in, week out. And today, they've proven that they can do that.
Most definitely. But let's take you back to before kickoff, around 2 o'clock, when it was announced that Trent Alexander-Arnold was ill, Andy Robertson was on the bench, and Joel Matip was rested completely. That meant James Milner came in at right back, Kostas Tsimikas came in at left back, and there was a debut at centre back for Ibrahim Konate. How do you think they all did, those 3 players, in, 2 guys, one in Milner, not a completely familiar position, and then 2 guys who, obviously, with Konate making his debut and Tsimikas only his 3rd start of the season?
Yeah, I think it was really, really impressive. I think when the team news came in, I was slightly surprised that all 3, obviously, Trent's absence was enforced, but then you think of Robertson and Matip as well. I know they've played a lot of football recently, but you wouldn't imagine that they would both be in the starting 11 on Tuesday. I think it is for Norwich, isn't it, in the League Cup? So, to be honest, I'd have played them today and rested them for Norwich. But, Jurgen Klopp obviously trusts the players that he's got. And I think, he was certainly proven right in that regard, because Tsimikas, we've seen him already this season when Robertson's been injured. He's come in and done a really good impression of him. And I think you're not going to get really a better stylistic fit for Andy Robertson for anyone really as a backup around the world. So I think he's absolutely perfect, did really well today. Crystal Palace can be tricky. I know Ayew on that side got at him a few times, but I think he coped pretty well with it, all things considered. And James Milner on the opposite side as well, obviously much more experienced, a player that's played in the Premier League for a long time, but to come up against Wilfried Zaha, I know there was a few fans inside Anfield a little bit sort of concerned about what that might mean. Obviously, Milner, we know he does have a tendency to get himself in the book, and then you can sort of tie yourself in knots against, Wilfried Zaha. But again, he did really well, really experienced, as we know, and you'd kind of expect that on the one hand, but again, to be in a position that you're not quite familiar with, probably wouldn't have been expecting to play this game. Obviously, Trent's illness has probably come quite late in the day. Nico Williams is out injured himself, so a bit of a surprise for him to get that. But again, it does just show the squad depth that Liverpool have. We looked at right back as a potential weakness, but you're not going to come up against many better players than Wilfried Zaha, I don't think, in the Premier League. Most weeks it's going to be a player who's not as good as him, and if Milner can cope with him, he can certainly cope with most players moving forward. So yeah, the fullbacks both brilliant, and then Konate, I thought, again, really, really good given the circumstances. His debut coming up against Christian Benteke. Loads of positives really to take from him. There's a lot more to come. There was a couple of nervy moments. There was a couple of clumsy bits in possession. But I think generally speaking, you can't really ask much more on his debut in a difficult game. Obviously, he's got Van Dijk next to him, which I think helped massively. I don't think it's a surprise that Klopp chose to put him in at a time when Van Dijk was there. But yeah, again, really, really promising signs, and to keep a clean sheet and to look pretty accomplished. I'd give him maybe a 7 out of 10 for the game. You know, he can, as I say, still continue to get better. But yeah, for a first performance to be thrown in for a game like that, I think, yeah, it's a testament to how much Klopp trusts him. And clearly he's a massive upgrade on some of the centre-backs that Liverpool had last season in that area. So yeah, it's big positives, I think, with all three of those players.
Did today prove that no matter who Liverpool have got in defence, they've always got a chance when Alisson Becker's in goal? A completely deserved victory for Liverpool at the end of the day. And as you rightly say, 3 goals they merited. But I'd probably, if I was Patrick Vieira, I'd probably come away from Anfield thinking I should have got 1 or 2, maybe, you know, themselves. That they didn't was largely due to the man in the Liverpool goal. He's just some player, isn't he, Matt? Like 4 clean sheets in 5 games now. Absolute brilliant goalkeeper.
Yeah, I mean, it's impossible to put a number on how many points he saves Liverpool each season. I think Liverpool would have won today, whoever they had in goal, because they could have gone on and clicked into another gear if they'd have needed to. But I think it's just massive, isn't it, to have a goalkeeper of that standard, that stature, everything. He just mops up, makes the saves look really easy. And he is, for me, the best in the world. And that's the reason why we saw a couple of occasions where he made saves. There was one early on, wasn't there? There was one, I think, pretty late on where he had to come out and dive at somebody's feet. I can't quite remember who that was, but you know, it was just so calm, so assured. You can't really imagine when you're inside Anfield that he's going to concede, because it's going to take something pretty special. And I think, you know, Palace knew that they weren't shooting when they got into certain occasions. Maybe if Adrian was in goal, for example, you might have had a shot on a couple of those occasions, but they know in the back of their minds there's a little bit of doubt. It's got to be a perfect shot for Alisson. So they play one more pass. They try and get themselves into a better position to try and shoot from. And again, that just gives Liverpool, the centre-backs, the holding midfielder, and Fabinho, I thought was really good again, just in front. It just gives them that extra second really to get themselves settled, get a foot in, and then counter-attack. And you know, you've got to credit Palace for being as attacking as what they were. Certainly if Roy Hodgson was still in charge, they wouldn't have come on and played in that kind of way. There's plenty of other teams as well that will do that in a similar position and sit back. And you know, you don't want to pick anybody out, but Burnley would be the classic example of they wouldn't have come and been that front foot and that aggressive in attack. So I think credit to Palace, but yeah, when you're coming up against Alisson, it's not quite as easy as having that game plan and implementing it. You've really got to be a top finisher to get past him. And yeah, it can only be a good thing, can't it, moving forward?
To the other end of the pitch, Jurgen Klopp was saying before the match in his pre-match press conference that Sadio Mane was flying, and he certainly proved that by getting that crucial opening goal 2 minutes before the break, his 100th for the club. As I said earlier, are we seeing signs, Matt, that Sadio is getting back to his very best form?
I think so. I don't think he'll ever get back to his absolute 100% peak. I think that a couple of seasons ago, he's probably not going to get back to that level, but there's still a 15-20 goal a season player in him in terms of Premier League goals. There's still, you know, a lot of things to like about him. And when Mohamed Salah's in the form that he's in, you don't necessarily need both of them to be on the absolute peak of the powers. But yeah, it was inevitable, wasn't it, that he was going to score against Palace. It's what he always does. 9 games in a row now. Nobody's ever done that before, like you say. So it was a good game, I think, for him to show what he can do. Similar to Leeds in a way, in that they gave him a bit of space. They gave him a bit of time as well to kind of turn and flick the ball past. I think the real test of whether he's back to his absolute best is when teams do come and sit in. Can he do that thing where he just stops, flicks the ball and goes and beats a man and disrupts that back line? I think we've not quite seen that from him this season so far, but yeah, the goals were there, the confidence was there. But I think Leeds and Palace kind of played a little bit into his hands. I think it's maybe too soon to make a proper judgment on that. But look, the more goals he scores, the more times he get himself into that sort of position. Obviously, had a little rest midweek as well, which will help him. the more that he can get into that groove, the better chance there will be that he can get as close as possible to what he was. Whether he'll ever be back to his absolute peak, I don't know, but there's certainly a really good player there, and we're still seeing it in little flashes here and there.
No doubt we're seeing Mo Salah as his absolute peak, and there's a piece that you've just written, haven't you, Matt? Is it live on the Liverpool.com set? Liverpool.com
We'll be in 5 minutes. Right, we'll be in 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Keep an eye on that. It's a really good piece. Why Liverpool really need to get this Salah contract tied down. But we won't touch on Mo today because we've done it a lot of the times. What a player. Another goal for him. He's done his job. But we've got to touch on Naby Keita's goal at the end. I think it's fair to say it was the best goal. And I think it was fair to say it was the best celebration. That's from going when you get Mo ripping off his shirt. But it was almost, if I can say it on the Blood Red Liverpool channel, it was almost Cantona-esque, wasn't it? That chip against Sunderland, turned round, gave it the big one to the rest of the crowd. It was some finish though, wasn't it, to be fair to him?
It was, yeah. It's a brilliant goal. And I mean, we spoke there about Sadio Mane scoring and getting confidence. That's exactly what Naby Keita will get from this. I think the fact that he's been fit for as long as he has now, it's only a short period into the season, isn't it? But there's no injuries. He looks sharp. I thought he was really, really good midweek against Milan. Obviously, comes on for half an hour and continues that today. Capped off with the goal, and it's something that we should see more of, I think, from Naby Keita. He's got the ability to score goals. He's got the ability to provide assists, and it's just about getting that consistency. I think if Liverpool get a goal every 5-6 games from him, that'd be brilliant. But the best thing really is just that he's on the pitch, he's playing, he's being able to press and harry and do all of the things that he was brought into Liverpool to do. I think it's a similar story with Thiago in that it's a really hard position, I think, with Liverpool to stand out and look really good. And obviously we know that both Keita and Thiago at their previous clubs were very much players who were exciting. They were sort of players that you could go on YouTube and watch compilations of them doing certain things. That's not quite the job with Liverpool. It's a slightly different role. It's a different sort of position to be in. And I think that makes it a little bit more difficult to live up to the expectations. But look, if he can just continue what he's doing at the moment, if he stays at the same level as what he is now, keeps himself fit and off the treatment table, I think there's not really too much more that you can ask from him in that midfield position. We know what he's there to do, and obviously Liverpool have lost a big player in Gini Wijnaldum, but look, if Naby Keita stays fit, he can do a similar sort of job, and obviously the odd goal here and there is a nice little bonus as well, which of course is something that Gini Wijnaldum was happy to contribute at times too. So yeah, really, really promising, I think, for both Keita and Thiago, to be fair, but I think Keita in particular, the last couple of games has really impressed me. As I say, it's just a case now about, can he keep fit? How long can he keep on doing that for? And if he can do that, he can be a real big part of this Liverpool team.
Reading a couple of comments that are coming in there regarding Thiago. Hopefully that his calf injury isn't serious and he's back quickly. I thought he played well again on the time he was on the pitch today, Matt. And I know for tomorrow, it's this weekend, it basically is the anniversary of his signing for Liverpool, isn't it? 1 year ago this weekend he signed for the club. So I think you're going to do a podcast later tonight for tomorrow about Thiago. That was the only negative on the day, wasn't it, really? Because he's not had much luck with injury himself. He's had a coronavirus, set him into a new team, no fans. Just you got to hope for his sake and for Liverpool's sake that it's not a bad one.
Yeah, absolutely. From what Jurgen Klopp has said at full time, it doesn't sound like it's too bad. It was just a little bit of a knock, I think, on the back of his leg from a tackle, I think with Wilfried Zaha, but whoever it was just one of those that there was no need to take a risk at that point in the game. I don't think it's one that's going to keep him out for a long time. Certainly, we don't know the full extent of it at this moment, but Jurgen Klopp seemed pretty happy with what he'd seen and what Thiago had said to him. But like I say, when you're 2 or 3 goals up, cruising in a game, you've got somebody like Naby Keita on the bench, particularly with a player like Thiago that, as you say, has had a few little niggles and knocks here and there. Don't take the risk. Take him off. Keep him and keep him fresh for the future. So, yeah, again, it's nothing to be too concerned about. And Liverpool do have other options in that area. But, yeah, I think the signs were decent from him today. But, again, similar to Keita, it's just a case of how long can he keep himself on the pitch for. If he does, he'll play a big role.
Can't finish without mentioning the fact that Manchester City dropped points in drawing 0-0 at home to Southampton. Do you think Pep was right all along, Matt, that he needed more fans there today? Because I know we laugh, and I'm sure that Man City fans will be doing the same if Liverpool had dropped points today and they've beaten Southampton. But any points they drop now in this tighter title race is really important, isn't it? I think it's a 3-point gap now. They've lost to Tottenham, drew at home to Southampton, won the other 3. But it is important, isn't it? Even at this early stage, it rounded off a good day for Liverpool.
Oh, it's massive. And there's only a couple of games, isn't there, between now and Liverpool playing Manchester City. Yep. So if they can keep that 3-point gap, is it only Brentford between now and Manchester City? There might be one more in there as well. But
Norwich, Brentford, Porto, then City, isn't it? And then another
international. So if Liverpool can obviously beat Brentford, and that's not a given, but it's something that you'd expect them to do. They know that they go into that Manchester City game with at least a 3-point gap. I'm not sure who City play when Liverpool play Brentford, but of course they could drop points in that one. But even if it's a 3-point difference between the teams, Liverpool at Anfield against Manchester City, they'll really fancy themselves to sort of boost that and make it a 6-point gap and really put the pressure on City. So yeah, it's huge at any stage of the season. I've been saying for a while that the City game kind of feels similar to what it did a couple of seasons ago, where Liverpool beat them with the Fabinho goal, established that bit of a buffer, and from there on in, City just couldn't keep up and couldn't catch them. So yeah, fingers crossed it's something similar, but for Liverpool, it's just a case of keep winning, keep picking up those points. They'll go to Brentford with plenty of confidence and rightly so of winning that game. And yeah, to be sort of this far clear from City. I know it's only 3 points and things can change very quickly, but with a team like Manchester City, you do need to get ahead quickly, get your noses in front and stay there. And obviously we know with a team like Liverpool, momentum is absolutely massive. So yeah, it's promising certainly. And I think as long as Liverpool beat Brentford, they'll go into that Manchester City game absolutely flying, knowing that a win really puts them in a perfect position to kick on. So yeah, really, really exciting times. And I know a few Liverpool fans certainly were keeping a look at that Manchester City score earlier today. And it does seem daft, doesn't it, 5 games in? But we know that's what it's going to be. Chelsea in there as well, I think, this season. Possibly United too, but certainly Liverpool and City. They're just going to keep on going and winning most games. So whenever they don't win, it does feel quite big.
Well, next Saturday at 12:30, before Liverpool play at Brentford at 5:30, it's Chelsea versus Manchester City. So that is an absolutely huge game. But as you say, if either drop points in that, yeah, Liverpool will have a real chance if they can go and beat Brentford and then beat City after that before the international break to have that gap. And as we know from the season before last, it's so important to put a gap between yourselves and Manchester City. Matt will no doubt preview that Chelsea City game, or talk about it, and definitely preview the Brentford Liverpool game next week. But first up, it's Norwich in the Cup. But yeah, I just recommend anyone who's still with us watching this or watch this later, head over to the Liverpool.com website and read Matt's story about Mohamed Salah. It's a really good one to do. Well, thanks very much for taking the time out to join us, mate, and we'll see you next week, no doubt.
Nice one, mate. Appreciate it.